fell in love without you. I waved goodbye to that heart of mine, beating solo on your lawn. Every aching wound will cauterize and bruise, in memory of what we used to call Columbia House Party. Jake, sad intro, buddy. What do you got for us?
They're a band that we talk about a lot, have come up a lot, we've covered before, and they're a band that I know mean a lot to both of us, and this album specifically means a lot to Blake, so I thought that this was going to be appropriate. So today, we're talking about Motion City Soundtrack's 2007 album, Even If It Kills Me.
You like Moog? You like a synthesizer? Well, welcome to our album. That song is Fell in Love Without You. Great album opener on an album that has pretty elite album sequencing. And I will say It is, I'm going to give it away early. It's my favorite album closer.
Interesting.
So I feel like it is...
Actually didn't know that, so that works out quite well.
Yeah, I probably should have saved that for later, but...
That's all right.
Okay, so Motion City Soundtrack are a top 5 favorite band for me to the extent that, Even If It Kills Me as an album and a song and just an idea is important to me and works its way into one of my half sleeves. And we did commit this to memory. Side note, it was our least listened to early episode. You absolute goons. You
uncultured
jerks.
Uncultured swine. That's what I would say.
I was very offended. So as much as this is Jake's episode to lead, I'm happy he picked it out of spite. How dare you? How dare you make me feel bad about Commit This to Memory? And Jake, your connection to Motion City Soundtrack has changed kind of fundamentally over the course of the last year, if you want to say it that way, or really since... I think, not to put words in your mouth, since we really dove into them for that Commit This to Memory episode.
I mean, yes and no. Like, I was super into Commit This to Memory when it came out back in 2005, which we talked about. And then they kind of went away as my interest in the genre went away. And then I got back into them around the time of My Dinosaur Life, which is still my favorite Motion City album, which we'll talk about at the end of this episode. This album is kind of funny for me because for a band that I do like so much, I never really gave this album... I would say, to your point about my relationship with Motion City Soundtrack evolving, it's more that my relationship with this album specifically evolved, because I never really gave this one the time of day for a really long time, because I remember when I was first getting back into them, and by the band's own admission, which we'll talk about, they kind of took it as a little bit of a softer approach than their other albums, a little less raw. So I kind of assumed that this was sort of their like boring major label album and that it didn't really sound like the rest of their stuff. And then going back to it, I was like, oh no, this is just another good like peak period Motion City album. So I felt kind of dumb for not giving this album the time of the day. But in terms of my relationship with this band evolving, it's not really that. It's just for some reason, maybe it's because of like my taste now being very much tied to sort of the newer emo pop punk that's rooted in power pop stuff, like your Origami Angels, your Telethons, your Meet Me at the Altars, etc. And like none of those bands exist without Motion City Soundtrack, as they are, I think I would say, like the quintessential power pop emo punk band, sort of our generation's The Cars, which we will talk about also in this episode. But I've just listened to them a ton over the last year and a bit, and they're really great.
They sure are. Jake, that sets it up well. You know, I led the last Motion City Soundtrack episode, and I'm not saying that to say I'm taking this one off, but I think I've made my fondness for them very, very clear in that episode. If anyone wants to go back and listen to that one, please do. However, as much as we chose Commit This to Memory, because that felt like the most important and the most information heavy of the Motion City albums, this is my favorite one. So I'm happy to be diving into it. We're going to talk about Motion City Soundtrack. We're going to talk about Even If It Kills Me. We're going to talk about Tattoos after this. All right, Jake, so you can give us a little spin back to the early stages of Motion City Soundtrack if you want, or you could tell these uncultured jabronis who didn't listen to the Commit This to Memory episode to just go back to that one and listen to it. You're in charge, so take us where you got to take us.
I'm going to pick us up basically right after Commit This to Memory was released. It was kind of their, maybe not commercial, but definitely their sort of scene breakthrough.
Yeah, and Everything Is All Right was a single.
Yeah, exactly. They had like a minor hit with their first record with Future Freaks Me Out, but Everything's All Right. I think if you're talking to someone about emo pop punk songs, that one's probably going to come up. It's a great song too, but it really sort of broke them into the scene. So Commit This to Memory, as we talked about so many years ago, it feels like, was leaked onto file sharing sites months before it officially came out on June 7th, 2005. The music videos, especially the video for Everything Is All Right, found regular rotation on MTV2, and the band also did the late night circuit on Conan and Jimmy Kimmel. Of course, with success in the mid-2000s pop punk scene brought debates on whether or not they were punk enough or whatever, and as singer Justin Pierre told Michael Roberst of Westworld, the independent voice of Denver, not the Murder Robot show, he said, "Really, it doesn't matter. People can call us a house, country, dance, thrash, metal, hardcore, post-nasal drip, and it's okay by me. Actually, I'm kind of waiting for something to bother me. I think if we became special enough, people may start writing really mean and awful things, and if that's what happens, so be it." The band's new success brought them sort of the fun amenities of being successful. They went to LA to play Jimmy Kimmel Live, and Pierre flew in a few days early and ended up crashing at Brett Gurwitz's house. Brett Gurwitz, of course, being the founding guitar player of Bad Religion, and also, more importantly, perhaps, the founder of Epitaph Records.
Cool sleepover.
Yeah, really. Pierre said that he got to stay in a nice bed, like with pillows designed for astronauts, the ones that fit your head or body or whatever. It was amazing.
That's how you know you've made it in the scene, is you get to sleep with a real pillow.
Look, I bought a new pillow and a new mattress recently. It's pretty great.
I can imagine what kind of pillows you used pre-Cassie.
Just pieces of shit. Shredded pieces of shit.
Yeah, flat, stained, whatever.
The group continued to tour constantly in the aftermath of Commit This to Memory, including dates on the 2005 Warped Tour, the inaugural Epitaph Tour with Matchbook Romance and From First to Last, and, of course, the Nintendo Fusion Tour with Fall Out Boy, Panic at the Disco, and The Starting Line, which is basically just a Blake show. This period of the band's career was not super fruitful and fun, as Justin Pierre's mental health and substance abuse issues were kicked into high gear, which nearly disbanded the group. Guitarist and songwriter Joshua Cain told The Vindicator about this period, "I think it's an understatement to say that it's tough to be tied to Justin's emotions. Justin's an interesting character. I love him to death, and yeah, his moods can denote how a show goes, let alone how a record goes. It's pretty much on the shoulders of our lead singer how things shape up for us. If he stays clean and sober, then he's an awesome dude and everything works out, things are happy and we get to keep doing this. And if he can't do that, which would suck, it's a different ballgame. I think a lot of bands don't have so much having to ride on a singer, it's just the way it is with us." So that's where the group was going into the recording of the album we're going to talk about today, which of course, as we said, is Even If It Kills Me. Even If It Kills Me was recorded in early 2007, at Stratosphere Studios in Chelsea and Electric Lady Studios in Greenwich Village. Justin Pierre has said that he consciously tried to sing softer on this album than in previous releases, worried he would be blowing out his voice, which, as I alluded to earlier, was actually what kept me away from this album. Initially, not so much him singing softer, but just it being a less rock, raw album, which is what I like from my Motion City soundtrack. He told Jonah Bayer in a noisy Rank Your Records column where he ranked this third in Motion City's discography. He said, "I think I was in my head a lot when making that album, and I was really concerned with being able to perform the songs live. So I learned how to sing them softly and pretty as opposed to going for it."
His ranking's wrong, by the way.
"Now I've learned to just sing a certain way live so I can get through an entire tour without blowing out my voice. But back then I was concerned with being able to pull it off, so I sort of feel like I lost a little bit in terms of my performance. I feel like I could have gotten a little bit gnarlier vocally in certain songs, but I didn't. And I think you can best hear this softer approach to Motion City soundtrack, which is where our opening lyric of the day came from. This is the song Last Night.
I'm still frustrated from last night. Things happen in halftime. I'm sick of the bends. My panic research was no help. I sink into myself, afraid of the fall that never ends. I wait, but I'm too tired to play pretend. I'll suffocate until the end.
Jake, not to correct you, sorry, but the opening lyric came from "Fell in Love Without You." It is confusing.
Oh, it did. I just heard the Last Night, and I was like, there it is.
Right. It is confusing because the album opens with "Last Night, I Fell in Love Without You," and then there's a song 3 songs later called "Last Night." It's a beautiful song.
It is a beautiful song, and it's a band favorite. I would say it's a favorite song, the album of Joshua Cain, and one of Pierre's favorite songs as well. It originated a little differently than most of the band's songs. The opening finger picking was just Cain kind of noodling in the studio, and the band heard it, and they composed the song almost on the spot, they said. Pierre then wrote the lyrics in one sitting, drawing inspiration from the movie Memento, about which he told AOL Music, which AOL Music, Hilarious. Think of that movie, then listen to the song again. It might make more sense. Joshua Kane told the Riverfront Times that Last Night is his favorite song on the album. And he said it's a really catchy song, but it's missing a lot of the traditional elements you would normally put in a pop song. So I feel like it's kind of a cool take on something traditional. He said the song reminds him of both The Cure and Death Cab for Cutie.
Yeah, I don't know about The Cure. I definitely can hear the Death Cab parallel.
Yeah, I think that's true.
I mean, it's just the intentional softness of it, right?
Yeah, it's very Plans era Death Cab, I would say.
Yeah.
Justin Pierre also struggled with writer's block making this album, something that hadn't happened in the band's career before. In that Rank Your Records interview, he says, "Even If It Kills Me was the first time I had a bit of writer's block, and I was still finishing a lot of the lyrics while we were recording the songs, and that never happened before. Last Night is one of my favorite songs we've ever done, and I think a lot of the songs on the record are great, but I just think it's a little on the poppier side. That's something gnarlier about it's a little on the poppier side. There's something gnarlier about My Dinosaur Life and the new one, and I think that's missing on Even If It Kills Me." The new one he was referring to was their 2012 album Go, which is when he did that interview. Even If It Kills Me is also notable for having 3 producers on the record, 2 of which are quite famous and had very different experiences for the band. The album was originally co-produced by Eli Janney of Girls Against Boys and the late, great Adam Schlesinger from Fountains of Wayne, who sadly passed away during the pandemic. About working with Schlesinger, Pierre said, "Adam works 10 times faster than most people, and he's already on to the next thing before you have a chance to think about what you did, so it was kind of like playing catch-up." Another part of the record, however, was recorded by Rick Ocasek of The Cars, legendary, needs no introduction musician. But in case you don't know, other than his work with The Cars, he's also produced a little album called The Blue Album. He produced Bad Religion's The Gray Race, which I didn't know. He produced Guided by Voices' Do the Collapse, among others. He's produced albums by Suicide, an absolute legend in the music world. And the group was obviously excited to record with him, specifically for the fact that he produced the Blue Album, though they were close to not booking him until he called them back at the last minute. However, working with him was not exactly what the band was hoping for. Bassist Matthew Taylor told the Minnesota Star-Tribune, "That last record we did, everything had to be perfect. We did take after take after take. Working with Rick, we'd think the guitars were out of tune, but he'd be like, perfect." And as Justin Pierre says, then the other half of the record was working with Rick Ocasek when he showed up. "That was probably one of the weirdest experiences because I think we thought one thing and found out another. Oftentimes he would be there for a couple hours a day and he just confused me the whole time and I didn't really know what he was talking about. I think he's good at picking the right songs and he did expand Even If It Kills Me from a little ditty to a full-fledged song, but I think the MVP of that session was his engineer Chris Shaw, who he later had mix Go." So here is an example of some of the work that Ocasek did on this record. This is Even If It Kills Me.
I've got a lot of things to do tonight. I'm so sick of making lists of things I'll never finish. I've lived here for the last 12 years, since early 1995. All my shit has been in boxes, but if I had a little more time to kill, I'd settle every little stupid thing. Yeah, you'd think that I would, but I'm too tired to go to sleep tonight, and I'm too weak to follow dreams tonight. For the first time in a long time, I can say that I wanna try. I feel helpless for the most part, but I'm learning to open my eyes. And the sad truth of the matter is I'll never get over it, but I'm gonna try to get and I'll do whatever it takes, even if it kills me.
Like I said, my favorite album closer.
I feel like that's a good thesis song, if that makes sense. Like, I think
absolutely.
a lot of bands have, like, if you listen to one song to know what we're about, make it this one. And I feel like, at least lyrically, that's kind of the one that I would say is Motion Cities.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not to project too much, but it's very much about, you know, struggling with anxiety or I mean, maybe depression. I don't really know exactly what Justin was going through. And that comes up on a lot of their songs. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm sick of the ththings I do when I'm nervous, like cleaning the oven or checking my tires, like that kind of stuff. But this is the most, I think, visceral of those. And I love the outro as a rap on this album. I love the outro as, like you said, a thesis statement. I love the outro as just kind of to get cheesy here for a second, it just as kind of like an affirmation that the line that gets repeated, I sure want to get back on track and I'll do whatever it takes, even if it kills me. You know, this kind of, if you decide that you can't get back, like there's two paths you can kind of take with this stuff. And on the one, you know, like, not to be over dramatic, but, you know, suicide is a real thing, right? Like killing yourself is, or even having thoughts or ideations about that is certainly something that can come up in dealing with this stuff, especially coming off the extended course where he's talking about feeling helpless for the most part and just trying to open his eyes and the realization that he'll never get over it, but he has to try. So, you know, this, I'll do whatever it takes, because, you know, literally any outcome that you could get to is worth it. You know, I don't know. I love that song. I think it's a really beautiful song. I think it wraps up one of my favorite albums just perfectly.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to sum it up. And I don't know if the band intended it to be that way, but it definitely became that. And I also think it's interesting from the Rick Ocasek sort of angle that he produced all the singles to this record. He produced This Is For Real, Last Night, Calling All Cops, Broken Heart, and Even If It Kills Me, which I think that kind of speaks to his, like, pop sensibilities, so to speak. Pierre obviously felt many kinds of ways after sort of the negative experience with working with him, especially because one of his heroes, a literal legend, and that's not what you expect. He said in that Ranky Records, "For a while I was really nervous about saying anything about my experiences of working with Rick, but it was kind of a bum out because literally I didn't understand a thing he said. I would do something terrible and he'd go, 'It doesn't get any better than that.' And then I'd do something I thought was great and he'd be like, 'Do it again.' So I think he was just playing some sort of head game with me or us the whole time. I just don't know what happened during the experience. It didn't make any sense. I thought the song sounded weird and confusing. I didn't know what was going on. We recorded a bunch of stuff and never really got to listen to it. And then Chris Shaw went away for a few days, and I think he spent a lot of time editing, picked the best vocal takes, and put it all together, so when we got it back, it sounded amazing," which I think is interesting. On your point about lyrically, the album and the song, Even If It Kills Me especially, the album's not quite as dark or as grim, I would say, as Commit This to Memory, but is still very much in tune with their, as you said, Pierre's inward-looking self-analysis, so to speak. Joshua Kane told the Riverfront Times about Commit This to Memory that Justin was in such a bad state of mind when he wrote our last album that it turned out to be a really grim record, whereas this record is more about being lonely and less about being self-loathing. I also think this is a really impactful record for a lot of those reasons. I know it's huge for you in that way, Blake. And as Marianne Eloise wrote in a retrospective article about the album's 10th anniversary for Vice, she said, "I read the album as a promise to recover, even if it was the last thing Pierre did. I had previously thought recovery meant being entirely better, but that album taught me that I would perhaps never be quite right, that I would always be obsessive and neurotic and traumatized." And this was not lost on Justin Pierre, who told the Off the Record podcast, I may or may not be bipolar, have crippling panic attacks and exhausting OCD. I may or may not be an alcoholic. I made a decision to turn my life around and set about it slowly, day after day, step by grueling step, over the course of several years. Which I think probably speaks to the, I don't want to say broader appeal, because that makes it sound like it was done for commercial purposes, and I don't want to give that impression. But I do think this album is one that really resonates with fans of this band. Like, I know if you watch live videos of them, people go fucking nuts for the songs off this record.
Yeah. And I think, like that essay laid out, and like Justin came to terms with, that, the kind of acceptance of having to do the work, even if there's not like a clear solution or finish line, is a really important lesson. And it takes a while. And, as someone who does therapy, it can be kind of frustrating, right? To, hey, maybe 4 sessions later, you're back talking about the same thing, but that's important stuff. And, Motion City can help you work through it a little bit.
Yeah. And I think they're a band, I don't want to say ahead of their time for that, because obviously they're not the first band to talk about these kind of things.
No, but his songwriting is so it's very clever and accessible. And he has a bit of that like Wonder Years to Dan Campbell to him, where like it's very specific, the lyrics he chooses. And like we went into the example on the Commit This to Memory episode about how he chose the names Max and Coraline for a song. And like, you don't have a friend's name Max and Coraline, but that doesn't really matter. Or like your neuroses are maybe not cleaning the oven or checking the tires, but like all of these things, he gets specific about. But I do think the specificity to make the song interesting without losing the accessibility and the relatability is something that kind of separates a lot of songwriters writing about this stuff. And it's, it's one of the reasons that I'm so attached to bands like Motion City Soundtrack and the Wonder Years. Whereas, I don't know, like, to use another example, the Hotelier is a band that I really like, and their lyrics are very like poetic and the prose is great, and it's clear they read a lot of Mary Oliver and stuff, but there's not that same level of relatability, at least on the, the first layer or two. You really got to kind of engage and think about it. So I don't know. I think it's always been a huge strength of Justin Pierre, and, the fact that he wasn't conscious of it as he was writing this stuff, and it's only come out in kind of retrospective interviews, that he was able to navigate that, I think makes a lot of sense, because I don't think you can, like, I don't think that level of relatability can be intentional. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I also think it's maybe by ahead of their time, what I really meant was influential. Because I was having this thought the other day. I was walking around listening to the Origami Angel record, and I was thinking about how I wish when I was younger, there was a band that was like, because they're so positive in their like emo rock music. And I was like, oh, I wish there was a band that like gave that message. And I'm sure there was, but like for argument's sake, I wish there was a band that gave that message to me when I was the age that like you listen to this kind of music. And it's kind of like, well, Motion City was right there. And I don't know if I really took in their lyrics as much when I was younger, but going back now, it's like, oh, like this is like I think this band is more important than they get credit for, to not put too much weight on them. But I think that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Should we play another song? I want to hear another song.
Yeah. All right. So the other song we're going to play from this album is sort of a Columbia House Party all-star game of a song. This is one of the band's few overtly political songs, which Pierre says was written from an apathetic point of view. He told AOL Music, "I try not to be too heavy-handed. It's just kind of a laundry list of things that bum me out. And the reason I say this is a CHP All-Star game is this song features Max Bemis of Say Anything, Rachel Minton of Zoloft the Rock and Roll Destroyer, and Sean Harris of The Matches. This is Hello Helicopter."
Hello, helicopter, are you here to stay? Bodies rust in motion, fighting night and day. Well, it's kill or be killed, and one day we'll get the best of them. Hello, helicopter, will you be my friend? Will you take me away? just trying to understand the way we are. Hello, helicopter, are you here to stay? Bodies rest in motion, fighting night and day. Well, it's kill or be killed, and one day we'll get the best of them. Hello, helicopter, are you listening?
No one gives a shit about the things they do. What
Maybe they were ahead of their time. Maybe I was right. Anyway, we're going to jump a little bit to the release of this album because we have other things to talk about today.
Yeah, we're going to do a little quantum leap.
Even If It Kills Me was intended to be the album that was going to launch the band into music stardom and help them achieve a, quote, Fall Out Boy-like success. Joshua Cain told The Vindicator, ultimately, I don't think we care that much. We do our thing and people like it or they don't. The album, however, didn't sell as well as the band and likely their label had hoped. I forgot to mention that before this album came out, the band signed to Columbia Records, the major label. Most of the album sales are blamed sort of just on it being 2007 and kind of around the time where the music industry really tanked. The album failed to go gold, and none of the singles really found success on radio or MTV. However, it still represented a bunch of career bests for the band. It peaked at number 16 on the Billboard 200 and number 1 on the Billboard Independent Albums chart. It debuted with 33,000 sales, which is double the first week of sales of Commit This to Memory. Broken Heart and This Is For Real, two songs we didn't really talk about, were the singles. I only wanted to mention this because I learned that This Is For Real's single includes a B-side that's a cover of Plymouth Rock by Lifter Puller, which I didn't know until I was researching, and I now must find that CD single and purchase it, even though I have no way to play it. It Had to Be You was also released in early 2008 as a third single. The album was mostly well received. It received favorable ratings from Spin and the New York Times, 3 out of 5 from Associated Press, 3 out of 5 from Blender, 83% from Absolute Punk, and 6 out of 10 from Pop Matters. The New York Times review said that together they made an album that sounds like one long sugar rush, and so long as the rush lasts, it sounds pretty great. They also praised Justin Pierre, saying he never sounds better than when he's rushing from an overwritten verse into a perfectly simple refrain. Andy Greenwald reviewed this for Blender, saying every generation needs a Weezer, and Motion City Soundtrack is the Weezer of emo, which I don't totally know what that means, but I like it.
I'm going to push back on every generation needing a Weezer.
I mean, in 2007, I think you can make the argument. Despite the relative success of the record, it also sort of marked the beginning of what could be called the beginning of the end of the band, or at least as they were, even though they would release 3 more albums. Joshua Cain told The Alternative in 2020, there was a sense of, I feel the cracks in the ship. I can feel it leaking. When you have a band and things start happening like they did for us and being on Warped and the momentum, it's like a drug. It feels good. It feels good to feel like it's happening, but somewhere in there, it got real weird for a long time. The stuff we went through as a band, it was just a lot for us to go through and never really unpack or process. That's the biggest realization as we got away from it. I feel like there were years there where I was on stage thinking about just going home, and I never told anybody that, thinking I'm not enjoying the part that I'm supposed to enjoy anymore. And if you are a fan of this band, I highly recommend tracking down that interview in The Alternative with Joshua Cain and Justin Pierre. It's super open and honest and really interesting. If you like this band, you should check it out.
All right, Jake. So the band did not break up, even though, as you mentioned, there was a little bit of the signs of fracturing or at least fatigue. And instead, they continued on and they made 3 more albums to date, including your favorite and one of Kerrang's 51 greatest pop punk albums ever, coming in at number 18. We're going to talk about My Dinosaur Life, then we're going to get personal after this. All right, Jake, so My Dinosaur Life comes out in 2010. It is my commuting back and forth from Kitchener to Toronto when I was in a, I guess that's not long distance relationship, but semi-distance relationship.
Distanced.
Yeah.
I would say it's distanced.
But this is the Motion City soundtrack album for you, My Dinosaur Life.
Yeah, this one, I think I got, as I said last week and sort of talked about earlier, this was a period of time where reviews very much influenced the kind of music I listened to. And I truly don't remember how I came across it, but I noticed that the AV Club gave it an A. And at the time, it was kind of weird to see quote unquote hipster publications give those kind of high scores to emo records. So I was like, I should check this out. And I did, and I loved it. And I still love it. It's one of my favorite like pop punk emo albums, or just albums in general. I really like this album. I love the lyrics. It's also sort of it's my album of walking around after being dumped by my girlfriend in Montreal.
My Planet?
Yep. I have a very clear memory of listening to that song like the day after and being like, oh no. Maybe one of the reasons this album is so good is they reunited with Commit This to Memory producer and Blink-182 person Mark Hoppus to produce the album. Maybe you've heard of him. I think it rules. The band felt that recording with Hoppus was a little looser than the first time and that they had a lot more fun. And then they would also subsequently join Blink-182 on tour for Blink's 2010 reunion tour. I was kind of saying how I like my Motion City soundtrack a little rockier and a little rawer, and this album definitely gives that, especially on this song. This is Disappear.
To the deep end, to the hard line, hold it strict together, man, hold it strict together if you can. Little beavers wrapped in dedication, all strung out on novelty, collapse yourself and try to comprehend an angry island, a bitter bee sting, severing each artery, free the self and fixing in between. It's isolation, mark the earth around you. Guess who's on the waiting list? Don't let you in on something secret. I can disappear anytime I want to. Time I feel you shuffle through my skin. I am with you till the end. You'll never know how it feels. You'll never know how it feels. Can you feel it? Can you feel it? I can disappear anytime I want to. Time I feel you shuffle through my skin. I am with you till the end. I can be composed when it suits me. I accelerate it, wicked on all fours. I surrender to the storm, and I can disappear anytime I want to. Time I feel you shuffle through my skin. I am with you till the end. I'm with you till the end.
Man, I really think, I think he's a talented singer, like a talented vocalist anyway, but I really think My Dinosaur Life, like there are a couple tracks on this album where he really stretches it in a good way, and you can see, that he's more than the, kind of power pop. This is more of a power pop album, but you get what I'm saying. Like even
I totally
even the verses in that one, and like he's breathless getting to the choruses on some of the songs on this album. He rules.
He does a lot of what we talked about in our Cursive episode with Tim Kasher, how they write too many lyrics for the timbre of the verse, and they just sort of have to figure out how to fit them in, and they do. And then it's like, but that, like, it being so packed in, I think is what makes them so impactful, and it gives a real,
like reading one of my articles.
Yeah,
bro, there shouldn't be this many words here.
That's why you're the best, man.
No, that's not. That ain't it.
Well, this ain't it for This wasn't it for a Motion City soundtrack. They were dropped by Columbia after the release of My Dinosaur Life, with Justin Pierre saying to Spin, "I guess we didn't do as well as they hoped or expected to, and we felt that having all their resources at our disposal would perhaps propel us into another dimension. But what we are, regardless of what label or machine is behind us. We did exceptionally well, though, if you want to look at it strictly based on sales numbers in today's climate." The band would follow that. They released Go in 2012 and Panic Stations in 2015, neither of which I like that much. I don't know about you. There's a couple good tracks, but nothing that...
yeah, there's a big drop-off after the first 4 albums. His solo stuff is okay, but not...
Yeah. I think it's telling that on their 2020 reunion tour, they only played songs from the first 4. And they didn't play a single song from Go or Panic Stations. Speaking of, they announced their breakup in March of 2016, releasing a statement saying, "We have no idea what the future holds, but for now, we are done." Justin Pierre told the Minnesota Star Tribune, "We've done this one thing constantly for so many years, nonstop. We all wanted to have something else to look forward to in our lives." They embarked on a farewell tour, concluding with a show at the Metro in Chicago, where they played 36 songs to a sold-out crowd. As you said, Justin Pierre released his solo album In the Drink in 2018, which was co-produced by himself and Joshua Cain. And then in June of 2018, the band announced that they were reforming. Their reunion tour, as I said, took place in 2020, called the Don't Call It a Comeback Tour. They had also planned to go to the UK to play the Slam Dunk Festival, but that was unfortunately scuttled by the COVID pandemic. They released 3 songs in 2020. The first was a cover of Fountains of Wayne, A Dip in the Ocean, for a tribute to Adam Schlesinger, who tragically died due to COVID. They also released a previously unreleased song, Crooked Ways, which was apparently intended for release on one of those weirdly good Twilight soundtracks, but never made it. And they also released a cover of Ed Ackerson's Wired Weird for a tribute album to him, who passed away in 2019. Ackerson produced Go. Joshua Cain has said there's no future plans for new music, but as Justin Pierre told The Alternative in that interview I mentioned, "I've said this before. Josh, Matt, and I, we've sent ideas back and forth intermittently since 2006. There's music to be made. I feel that. There are songs that I'm like, fuck, this could be amazing. I've got this ditty that's perfect. For me, I found I'm much more concept-driven. I can't write something unless I've got this big, ridiculous plan. We do have a lot of songs, and I think we could put this thing together if we could all get on the same page, but with the pandemic, ... And that's where we leave them.
That is where we leave them. As sirens go outside my window, yeah, we get the bad take alarm. So I guess it's time for some bad takes, or some bad and regrettable tattoos, maybe.
Yeah, let's talk tattoos.
So, back in the Commit This to Memory episode, I revealed that so I have 2 half sleeves, so the top of each arm is covered. I have 1 tattoo on each forearm and 1 on my back. Only a couple of those, like only the 1 half sleeve is really music related, and there are no direct references. It's all just kind of inspired by stuff around certain bands or certain moments that mean a lot to me. However, the words "even if it kills me" are the only words I have in any of my tattoos. So obviously this album and that sentiment mean a lot to me. Jake, you have some music-related tattoos as well.
Yeah, I have a single music tattoo. I have a single tattoo, which is a music tattoo. I have the Stay Positive logo from the Hold Steady record from 2008. I got it because I was working one summer at university at a charity, and all the people around me were very positive people, and I was 21 years old and, let's say, not the most positive person in the world. And I decided that was going to be my new outlook on life. So I was going to get my favorite band's positivity logo tattooed on me. I don't know if the positivity thing really stuck over the next decade, but I go through fits and starts of enjoying having this tattoo, I would say. Some days I'm like, yeah, and some days I'm like, boy, that's on my arm.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the way it goes with tattoos.
Right. Exactly. That's the tattoos you get when you're 20.
Yeah, I mean, I got mine... I think I only have 1 of mine when I was 20, and the rest have kind of been pieced together over time. So that sleeve that I have is, I mean, it's kind of just like a personal sleeve. Like, there are some nods to my brothers and some friends and stuff like that. Again, nothing discreet and explicit, in part because, like, you know, if I was getting tattoos when I was 18 or 20, like, I'd probably have some brand new tattoos now that I would really regret. So you want that plausible deniability if anyone gets canceled. But also just, like, I just think it was more interesting for me going through the process of, with my tattoo artist, of what kind of, I mean, mostly I just wanted a half sleeve because I had one on the other arm. You know, what kind of art could we create using these influences? So within mine, there's Even If It Kills Me text on a flaming typewriter as the page burns. I have this like luchador guy as part of that sleeve, and it's more of a thing for my brother and inspired by Rene Magritte. But part of the idea came from me. Funeral for a Friend, one of their albums, has an album cover based heavily on his work. And I just love the idea of the Covered Face series. There is a skull hand reaching across a heart that is very Alkaline Trio. There are kind of blue, green, and pink accents that are the colors from the Blink-182 self-titled. And there is a mixtape labeled Summer '05 Mix, which would include From Under the Cork Tree, Commit This to Memory, A Fever You Can't Sweat Out, Crimson, Almost Here from The Academy Is. So you get a lot of stuff. I'm probably missing a couple because I can only see so much of my arm at once without getting up and going and looking in the mirror. But yeah, I kind of laid out a bunch of stuff like that and went through it with my artist between sessions and stuff. And I don't know, I feel good about it. I like the way it looks. It's nice and bright. I don't like explaining every single one of those things. So when someone asks me what the tattoo means, my favorite response is that it means I like tattoos, which is me being a jerk. But you know, I don't do that often, so I feel like I get a couple freebies. Would you ever get another band tattoo or like music inspired tattoo, Jake, or a tattoo in general?
Yeah, I definitely have. I've had a lot of sort of ideas over the years. A lot of it is honestly complicated by the fact of what I do for work, in that covering tattoos when you're not famous is a pain in the ass because you have to use a lot of makeup that is I feel bad. Like, I don't want to hold up the makeup artist for like taking 20 minutes to cover some shitty thing I got on my arm when I was 20. And I'm not famous enough for them to digitally remove my tattoos. But yeah, I have a few ideas of things that I wanted to get that I've never really pulled the trigger on. I do have a standing bet with some people that if the Blue Jays ever win the World Series, I have to get the logo tattooed on me somewhere. I don't know if that still stands because it was in 2015. But yeah, I think I think the answer is I would like to get more tattoos, but I'm reluctant for reasons that have nothing to do with the tattoos themselves.
Yeah, I hit the critical threshold of like, it doesn't really matter right now anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah.
Like, short of it coming up above the neckline on my shirt, you can't, like, I could wear a long sleeve and you can't tell, but like, if I'm in a t-shirt, you're going to be able to see them, and I don't have a real job, so that shouldn't really matter. All right, man. Well, maybe we'll get a Columbia House Party tattoo. Although our Columbia House Party logo is already very similar to a tattoo I already have, so that's fine.
Yeah.
All right, Jake, we have to, speaking of mixtapes, we have to pick a song off of Even If It Kills Me for the mixtape. What do you think?
I think both as a closer to the mixtape, so to speak, because I don't know if we'll be picking them next week or the week after.
Yeah, we'll still pick a song, but they might just go on the B-side instead or something.
Yeah, as a closer to the notes, to the mixtape volume 1, let's call it, I think it only makes sense to go with the closing song from this album, which, as you say, is one of your favorite closers. So I think Even If It Kills Me makes the most sense.
Unless you're in Japan, in which case it's not the album closer, which is confusing on Spotify, because it's not the album closer on Spotify, I don't think.
That is
Maybe
odd.
it is. It's not the album closer on some streaming service because you get the bonus tracks.
Yes, of course.
Yes. That makes sense to me. Thank you to producer Dylan for all his great work. Thank you to Justin Pierre for a lovely album and a lovely discography that means a lot to me. And thank you to you, Jake.
Yeah, man. This was pretty close to, I think, what we originally envisioned, just with less alcohol.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought you were talking about the episode at first. It's like,
no.
You might not. You might not have been drinking alcohol, but
No, this is a good episode too. We're good.
Yeah,
We're good
I
at
hope
this.
so. Yeah. Anyway, we will talk to you guys next week.
Oh, hey, please try the fish.